Okay, this is a grab bag of kind of feedback and questions that came up discussing indie games. So if you'd like the indie games business discussion, hang on for a minute. Also, thanks for everybody who brought stuff up or brought up questions or brought up corrections for me even. I appreciate that. These are conversations. I've had some people get mad that I don't draw conclusions or tell you what to do or what to think. That's for your mom and dad to do, not for me. If you're going to YouTube videos to be told exactly what to do, I mean, outside of tutorials, I'm just trying to raise questions and talk about things, okay? I am better looking than your dad, aren't I? I could see why you want me to be your dad, but okay, I'm not. Thanks for worrying about the face. It's fine. This dry weather really plays havoc with me. January's always a bad month. Okay, but let's get into it. Let's get into what you guys care about. Do you think the death of licensed games is a cause to death of the middle level games? So almost all of what these questions come about are chasing this idea of predictable, stable income. So that is what big publishers and developers look for. That is what big or indie developers and publishers hope for, right? You hope for the hit. I mean, how many studios do you know are the one game and then they try other things and they're always still known for the one game? That's fine. But having predictable income, having what can we do that will make us, if we put in $10, we'll get $100. So in this case, for a while there, it was you buy a license, you either pay something up front or you give them a percentage of it, and then you make some game that goes along with it, some action-y game, and then you put that out there, and the name recognition gets you out and gets you enough excitement around it that you sell enough copies. You're never going to make a gajillion dollars, but if you put in $50, you might make 75, and sometimes that's good enough, right? And so that's why that world existed. Now, does it not exist because the licensing titles tend to now swing for the fences and be these big budget games? Is it because the middle's harder to attract attention and using those licenses don't attract enough attention to make it worthwhile to split that revenue? Or if people realize that they can make their own IPs and invest in those and then they don't have to make the share of revenue, right? It's probably all a little bit of some of that. I'm not sure exactly. Perhaps what indie labels miss are proper recurrent consumer spending established franchises. That's 100% it. And that is why you see things like Bungie be bought for so much money, because they had some understanding of we can make predictions of how much money you're going to make based on this last year, right? And so again, stable predictive income is worth way more than lumpy occasional hits, because lumpy occasional hits, you may just never get a hit again. I mean, think about how many studios do you know that are just one big hit, and then they built their whole company around and they try to do a bunch of other things, but they never can. That happens a lot, and that's fine. They should do that, or they can get into publishing or whatever, right? But it's hard. And so almost everybody's looking for that stable recurring revenue, and it's really hard for indie devs to do it. And so there's this whole thing of when you're going to VCs, what they wanted you to say was games as a service, that you're going to go free to play because you're going to have the biggest possible audience and all of this. But the problem is free to play only works if you have giant audiences. So we see a lot of free to play games right now that have recently been released that are good games that are failing because they're not. There's a lot of reasons we can say why they're failing, but then the problem is that their entire revenue model falls, and instead of selling a bunch of copies and then being able to make their next game, they're just making no money, and that's a big problem for them, right? Aren't most indies self-published nowadays? I meant to look up stats on this. I'm just talking about my butt, but I think roughly it is yes, right? But this is the thing I was talking about in the first video of this series, kind of is the problem we have right now is there's 10 million people making games, and they're putting them out. And they're all indies, but most of them are going to fail. 99.99999% will fail. The ones that don't, some of them don't have publishers, some of them do. And so I think if you probably went by sales, that number changes a lot. I don't know what the number is, but I would just say that would change a lot. And sometimes it's because publishers actually help with actual marketing and some things they do around the game. And some publishers are just better at helping developers get across the finish line. And also think about it. If you don't have somebody funding games, that means all the games being made are being made self-funded, meaning they're being made out of people's pockets. That means they have to either have enough money saved up and they're making a game, or they're just scraping by and making it on the side, right? If you go really early on in my videos, the Engineer game we're talking about was two guys just did it on the side, that they worked together in the same office and came home and worked on their game. And then making a fun game, right? But that's hard to do. And so the indie publishers serve a role, but yeah, they're not required. I think you were thinking of Chris Wainstrath, who co-founded GitHub. he founded Null Games. Correct. Yeah, Chris is super nice, super great. I was hoping to work with him, didn't work out. A lot of times, the publisher and the game just don't connect, and everybody likes each other, and you just have to be like, hey, maybe next time. And there's no hard feelings. Null Games, they've released, I think, at least one title so far, maybe two. But there's somebody to watch because how he's approaching it and how he's funding them and how he does recoupment is really interesting. So, ghastly how much this mimics movie studios disappearing from mid-budget titles. Yes! Think of Marvel movies as games as a service and predictable income, right? And that's where you come from. Look at Star Wars, originally predictable income, but like we've seen Disney with both Marvel and the Star Wars things, is they've kind of milked it. They maybe milked it too far. And that's upset a lot of the fans, and it's taken away a lot of the value in that predictability. Movies have the added problem of now they don't have theaters often. And if you don't have theaters and you're making deals with streaming companies, you're essentially capping your upside. No matter how big of a hit you make and how popular it is, you're only going to see so much money. I mean, there's revenue share on top, but it's not like it was in the movie theaters where you could just be like, oh my God, we made $2 billion. I'm never going to take a phone call again and just go live on a yacht. But so like those kind of things are changing that model for sure, and it is very different. TinyBuild has always been a shovelware-like company. That's not fair. TinyBuild, what they would do, since that is where they're from, is they would go to Eastern Europe and work with Eastern European developers and bring them over a lot of unknown games. So a lot of times when I go to Eastern Europe, they don't have a culture of sharing as much there. I know I'm really painting a broad picture of all of Eastern Europe and making a broad statement there. But so it would be harder to find titles because you wouldn't see them shared as much online. And so they would go over there and they would know people and they would work with people. I really, again, like the people there, and I really like how they work with their developers. So that's where they come from. And so they would get varying degrees of quality and execution, but they would make bets and help these smaller developers come over. So it was a good thing. Raw Fury and Hooded Horses, talking about some good mid-sized publishers. Yeah, and Coffee Stain Publishing, I think, is another one. There are some people out here in this place, besides the other ones I mentioned already. It's just getting harder. And I think they're learning a lot of what I'm understanding, as well as a lot of other people, is it's a lot about community and having that community around your game and having that understanding of that and then launching into that instead of just out there trying to do traditional press and marketing. I do these videos when I'm up on a Saturday. Actually, I'm not up. It's 1 o'clock. It's a rainy Saturday. It's all right. I'm not sure having a 200 plus person studio and needing to sell millions of copies is a recipe for economic success anymore. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But for people who have large sums of money, where do you put it? What do you do with it? You make these big bets, you make these big investments, and they do pay off. And when they do pay off, they pay off gigantically. And that's the thing, right? And so I know, again, when the price of what Call of Duty came out, a lot of people are like, well, give me $100 million. I'll spend it better. No, you won't. No, you won't. That's hard. When you're young, you assume everybody's stupid. When you get older, you start assuming everyone's smart and just made mistakes or tried for something and it just didn't work out, right? So just stop thinking that these companies are stupid. It's hard. And it is hard. And there's a lot of competition up there now for that. And there's the games as a service and people playing longer and all of that, right? That's a whole other thing. Someone asked about MetaQuest, me playing something on the MetaQuest store. No, sorry, I did not use anything by Meta. I don't use any of their platforms at all. Zero. Got to take a stand somewhere. And then someone was asking about music licensing and actually Left 4 Dead in particular. I'll do maybe a longer one on that. But music licensing is what kills life of games often because they're tied up in licensing and licensing deals. And music licensing publishing is really hard. And one of the reasons why Valve approached it the way we did, where we bought out the entire license and could always do whatever we wanted with the music, because otherwise it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And that's why you see some games pulled off the store shelves because of the music licensing deals. Sigh. But yeah, I'll go talk about Midnight Riders at some point. But there you go. Hope you have a good weekend. I'll see you Monday.